Yeah. Okay. We got everything. The desire to say something. I noticed that interjecting. I don't know. I don't even know. It's like forever. I was thinking more like 2004. For me, we had the Kindle. Brad, great to see you. Thank you for doing that. Well, I can't say much. Yeah, I went to pray because anytime somebody yeah. Yeah, which used to be the most fun because they were I know, I just look at me, I will move the resolution that the anybody who handles revised and adapted. So I get
All right. 10th Judicial Circuit Court of Illinois is now in session. The Honorable Chief Judge Catherine Gorman presiding.
All right, everybody take a seat. All right, good afternoon. Welcome, family, friends, and special guests. From up the street, we have Judge McDade and Judge Howley. We have retired judges Brandt, Collier, Eagleton, and McCuskey. And those sitting in Peoria, thank you for taking time from your busy dockets to be here. We're here for the 110th memorial service in Peoria County. The records date back to 1911. It's been held annually until 2020 and postponed until today. So that makes it the 110th memorial service. I want to thank Dave Miller, who's been an integral part of the tradition since I can remember 1993 when I came to town. The Peoria County Bar and Court Administration for making today's ceremony a reality despite some uncertainty along the way. During the ceremony, looks like everybody's masked up. Unless you're speaking, please wear your masks. Since we've last had a memorial service, I see so many people that know my dad. As my dad would say, we've lost some of nature's noblemen, and today we'll celebrate them and their legacy and reflect on how fortunate we are to practice law on the 10th. And with that, I'll turn the service over to Dave Miller.
Thank you. May it please the court and all assembled, I have some preliminary remarks, more housekeeping before we get into the memorial itself. It's nice to see everyone that bemasked as a result of the COVID pandemic. Memorial services of the Peoria County Bar Association are traditionally held on the Thursday before Memorial Day each year. As a result of COVID, we missed the memorial, which would have been held on May 21, 2020. Likewise, COVID interrupted our 2021 memorial, which was scheduled for May 20, 2021. As the saying goes, nothing is certain but death and taxes. Inevitably, our brothers and sisters in the practice continue to depart without regard to our inability to honor them in timely fashion. Since the last memorial, we have lost 18 attorneys. Therefore, we have scheduled 2 memorials, that which we are attending today, and the second on Thursday, September 16th of this year. As a result of COVID precautions, everyone except those who are speaking should wear a mask. For those of you who forgot to bring one, and I look around and don't see anyone, Stephanie Bittner has a supply. Following the service, there will be a reception for friends and family in the Renaissance Room on the 3rd floor of the Jansen Building. We hope that all of you can attend. Now to the memorial. May it please the court, members of the judiciary, members of the Peoria County Bar Association, and friends and families of those whom we honor. The 17th century English poet, John Donne, described the passage of generations best when he said, "Send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." I suggest that each of you take a moment to look at the program. It lists each of the members of our association who have been remembered in this service over the years. As you can see, and as Judge Gorman indicated, this is the 110th continuous memorial service presented by the Peoria County Bar Association. A tradition in which we are singular and of which we are rightfully proud. And I state with full assurance and certainty that we are the only bar association in the state of Illinois that honors its members in this fashion and has done so for anywhere near the period of time that is reflected on your program. This is a good thing we do today. In paying tribute to our departed friends and colleagues, we reflect not only upon their lives and accomplishments, but also upon the gifts and good fortune which enable us to contribute to the rule of law and to our community. They are the blocks upon which we build. It is our responsibility to build the next level. A memorial will be orally given today and in written form will be spread upon the records of the Peoria County Bar Association. Today we honor Jerry W. Brady Jr., Henry D. Netzel, Thomas H. Trager, K. Tate Chambers, Glenn Bankendorf, and Medley Turno. Following formal presentation of the memorials, and as is traditional, the floor will be open to remembrances and reminiscences of those whom we honor by persons who are in attendance. The first memorial is presented for Jerry Brady by Jody Hoos.
Chief Judge Gorman, judges, friends and family and that are here with us, and some in another courtroom and some watching from wherever people watch from these days. Welcome. In the fall of 2019, when I was asked to say a few words about Jerry Brady, I was very honored, and I thought, great, say something nice about somebody who actually was nice. Prosecutors never get to do that. So I was very excited. And then COVID hit. And this memorial was postponed, and then postponed again, and then postponed again. And so now here we are 2 years later to honor the individuals that we're here for. And I thought that was pretty ironic because Jerry Brady was the most humble and modest man that I knew. And the fact that we are paying a tribute for him 2 years later, he would not be happy about. But here we are. My mom always told me, when you're honoring a person's life, don't say things that they would want you to say, tell the truth. So I'll tell the truth. Gerald W. Brady was born in Galesburg, Illinois in 1949. It was the same year that the National Basketball Association, what we know as the NBA, was formed. I suppose it was fitting then that Jerry grew a fondness for basketball, and he would spend countless days and evenings and weekends and years of his life coaching a number of area youth basketball programs. I'm guessing there's 1 or 2 of you in here today that probably passed through Jerry as a coach. Jerry graduated from Spalding Institute in 1967 and Bradley University in 1972. He enlisted in the United States Army Reserve before obtaining his law degree from St. Louis University in 1981. Jerry married Sue Olson, who's present here today. They have 3 children, Ryan and Chris, both of whom are here, and Megan, who lives in Chicago, but I believe she's listening in, so hello, Megan. I see his brother John and his wife are also present today. 2 of Jerry's children, Chris and Megan, followed in their dad's footsteps and became attorneys. Ryan became a firefighter. Don't worry, Jerry, 2 out of 3 is not too bad. But speaking of the law, Jerry had a successful private practice for 25 years. And if you had a legal matter in Peoria County, and as I look around the room back there, there's a few of you that have, and I'm not talking about the attorneys. But chances are, over the past 3 decades, if you had a legal matter in Peoria County, you were referred to Jerry Brady. The number one question I would get as a young traffic assistant was this: if I get a DUI, who should I hire? And my number one response was Jerry Brady. See, there are a lot of attorneys that can do civil work, and there are some attorneys that can do criminal work, but very few attorneys could do both. And Jerry Brady was one of them. After he became the state's attorney, Jerry and I spent a lot of time out in the community. And I cannot tell you how many times somebody would run up to him and say, "Hi, Jerry, I wish you were still my attorney." It happened over and over and over and over again. It got to the point where I was absolutely certain if the Pope ever visited Peoria, he would stop Jerry and say the same thing. Jerry was Catholic after all. But take a minute to reflect on the lives that Jerry touched as a practicing attorney. Jerry helped those who were injured in the traffic accident, and Jerry helped those who caused the traffic accident. He helped families write their wills or write people out of them. As he told me one time, always be nice to your family. You never know when they're updating their will. And then there's the lives Jerry touched as state's attorney. In 2011, Jerry was sworn in as the Peoria County State's Attorney. He left a very prominent and lucrative position to go to an uncertain future filled with crime, campaigns, and frankly, lots of chaos. Many question, why would he do that? He did it because he wanted Peoria to be a great place to live and raise a family. Jerry had a deep commitment to making his community better, and he was going to do everything he could to make that happen. He remained in that position until his passing in June of 2019. Now, I can't give a tribute to Jerry and talk about his time in the state's attorney's office without bringing up the Dateline case that we tried together. And I know a lot of you have heard many of the stories, either stories from the trial or stories from afterwards when we were filming and on the set with Dateline. But there's one story that not a lot of you know that I wanted to share today because, frankly, it's one of my favorites. So, as you would expect, Dateline hired a makeup artist, and as you would expect, Jerry wanted no part of that. Of course, Jerry lost that battle. So that's a little secret, by the way. If anyone was wondering, yes, Jerry Brady did in fact have makeup on. Now, I know for those of you who have actually seen the episode and saw how sunburned he was, you're probably thinking, how in the world did he have makeup on? Well, I didn't say the makeup artist was good. But that's not the part of the story I wanted to tell. The part of the story I wanted to tell is the look on Jerry's face when he saw the makeup artist. Now, the best way I can describe her is somewhere between a 40-year-old version of Tammy Faye Baker, an employee at Big Al's, and Dolly Parton. I think there's more material on the jacket I'm wearing today than what she had on her person that day. So picture Jerry, as we all know Jerry, picture him walking into a room and seeing that person, and then picture him sitting in a chair having that person putting makeup on his face. Now, Jerry, always the gentleman, never said a word. But he didn't have to, because his face said everything. If you thought his face was red in Dateline, you should have seen it then. He made me promise I would never tell that story, but remember my mom's rule. Jerry also had a love for the outdoors. He always would be sponsoring a local Ducks Unlimited or Pheasants Forever or some other local hunting and fishing group. Every fall you could find him in a duck line or walking a field for pheasants. And there was one particular hunt that I remember that I wanted to talk about because Jerry and I almost died that day. We were out with the likes of Ed Bowers and Ron Hanna Sr. and a number of other characters. And for those of you who aren't familiar with hunting, the primary goal, or what's supposed to occur, is you all spread out in a line and you walk down the field at about the same pace. So that way no one's in front or behind of a person, so nobody gets shot. So you walk along in your line, and if a bird gets up, you're to shoot only if it's in front of you. So maybe a 45-degree window. If the bird's there in front of you, then you're okay to shoot. But if it's in front of someone else, obviously don't shoot. Well, let's just say Ron Hanna Sr. His field of shooting was not 45 degrees, it was about 180 degrees. And Jerry and I were next to him. So of course we start walking along and a bird flies up and the next thing I know, all hell breaks loose. Bang, 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 bang! I saw my life flashing in front of me, only to realize it wasn't my life flashing in front of me, it was the muzzle flash from Hannah's gun as it was pointed right at our direction. I don't really remember a lot of the next few seconds, but I remember two things very well. One, the cackle of the pheasant as it flew away, and Ron Hanna Sr. yelling at us, "Why the hell did you two not shoot?" Jerry's face was pretty red in that moment too. For months afterwards, he blamed Senior for hearing loss. But looking back on it, I realized something. Jerry and I probably should have known better, because immediately when we set foot on the field, Ron Hanna Jr. makes a beeline to the farthest side of the field as far as possible from his dad. Great friend. I would be remiss if I didn't, in talking about Jerry's friends and hunting stories and the outdoors, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Ron Hanna, who I just ran into recently. And along with the usual hunting stories and courtroom gossip as we were going back and forth, he stops and he says to me, "What in the world were you thinking giving up that judge position?" Like I haven't heard that before. He said, "Really? Did Jerry not teach you anything?" I just kind of laughed and said, "Apparently not." But I thought to myself, Jerry Brady taught me everything. Because he taught me that serving your community comes with sacrifices, it comes with hard work, and it comes with integrity. You do it every day, though, despite those difficulties, because you hope to make a difference in the community around you and those around you, even if it's a small difference every day. Jerry Brady, in his time in the state's attorney's office, had record-breaking murders, record-breaking officer-involved shootings, and he never, ever complained. He never got upset or lost his temper. He never said a bad word about anyone, as opposed to one state's attorney I know who I don't know if ever said a good word about someone. But I'm not going to mention his name. I think he was the shortest state's attorney we had, not counting me. The truth is, Jerry Brady loved his job, and he loved Peoria County. And Peoria County loved him right back. So Chief Judge Gorman, I move that this memorial become a permanent part of the record of the 10th Judicial Circuit and the Peoria County Bar Association.
Thank you. Motion granted.
Thank you, Jody. The next memorial was to be David Lynch, to be presented by Roger Holtzcraft, but Roger was unable to attend, and that memorial will be given on the 16th. The next memorial resolution is for Henry D. Netzel, and I will present it. Our friend, it was prepared by Jay Jansen. Our friend and colleague, Henry D. Netzel, died on January 7, 2020, following a long and productive life. Henry was born in Chicago on January 9, 1922, the second youngest of 5 siblings. He graduated from Morgan Park High School in 1940. Shortly thereafter, with the onset of World War II, Henry enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. During the war, he served as a dive bomber pilot in the European theater. Upon his honorable discharge, Henry attended college and thereafter law school. In 1945, he married Jeannie Anderson, and upon being licensed to practice, moved to the South Chicago suburb of Riverdale. There, Henry practiced workers' compensation law while he and Jeannie raised their 4 children. In 1968, Henry joined longtime workers' compensation defense lawyer Donald Baylor. The practice of workers' compensation law was considerably different in the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s than we know it today. And a large part of this information is my personal knowledge, as well as what Jay Jansen added. Permanent partial disability rates, from which a 20% contingent fee was derived, were so low that petitioners' lawyers had to have a substantial volume of cases to make a decent living. Obviously, the same was true of defense lawyers, such as Donald Baylor and Henry Netzel, who, while being paid on an hourly basis, nonetheless had to defend a high volume of cases. At the time, the leading petitioner's lawyer was Bill Beckwith, who would come to the workers' compensation call with over 100 files. Henry and Don Baylor, who died in the early 1970s, had to come prepared to settle or try that many cases over a 3 to 4 day period. Unlike today, when medical depositions are taken, and in workers' compensation, doctors' formal opinions on disability and causation are accepted by report, live testimony was often a component of the case. On the petitioner's side, and as I look around the room, I don't know if there are any of you who would remember this. Dr. Harold Diller would walk across the street from his offices in the First National Bank building to the Industrial Commission, which then met in the City Hall. Initially, the arbitrator was a retired school teacher, Warren Metz, and by initially, I'm going back to when Henry Netzel started in the early 70s. On many occasions, Dr. Diller, on a trial before Warren Metz, would set up his shadow box and testify from x-rays which he had taken in his offices. Obviously, to move cases, the great majority had to be settled. Following the death of Don Baylor, Henry Netzel took over as the Dean of Workers' Compensation Defense in the Peoria area, which included calls in Galesburg and Peoria. In that capacity, he was frequently on the road and became a master of evaluating disabilities, converting them to percentages, and negotiating settlements throughout central Illinois. Henry practiced into the early 1990s and was always known for his consummate skill and ability to negotiate favorable settlements, even as the arbitrators changed from Warren Metz to Doc Harwood and thereafter to Neva Neal. Henry was not only a pleasant and affable attorney who got the best results through negotiating, he was also recognized as a tenacious advocate for his clients. Apart from the Industrial Commission, where Henry limited his practice, he participated in community activities with his wife and 4 children. He had an interest in the stage, in musicals, drama, and comedy. While not appearing before the lights himself, Henry served many years on the boards of Peoria Players and Cornstalk Theaters, where he is well remembered and warmly regarded. During his 98 years, Henry saw much happiness and his share of tragedy. He was preceded in death by his wife Jeannie, as well as his siblings, Alfred Paul Netzel, Edward Frank Netzel, Leonard Henry Netzel, Harry Charles Netzel, Charles James Netzel, as well as his sister, Florence Edith Freitas. He is survived by one sister, Antoinette Ann Liebelt of Highfield, Wisconsin, together with his children, Lauren Ulrich, Richard and Rita Roach, Jonathan and Deborah Glatz, and Timothy Netzel, as well as 13 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren in whom he took much pleasure and from whom he derived considerable happiness. To best characterize Henry Netzel, one is driven to the phrase that he had quiet, assured kindness. Henry was quiet but determined. You always knew where he stood and that his footing was upon a solid foundation. As an able advocate, he represented his client's interests in competent and determined fashion. Yet possibly, Henry's greatest attribute was his warm and infectious smile, which reflected the inherent kindness which he showed to friend and opponent alike. He will be missed. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Henry Netzel, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his companionship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association forward a copy of this memorial resolution to be spread upon the public records of Peoria County, and I make that motion.
It's granted.
Respectfully submitted this second day of September 2021. The next memorial is to Deborah Stegall by Brad Ingram.
Happy to be up here just to take my mask off. I haven't been back here for almost 2 years, and reflecting on my talk today about my friend and colleague, Deb Stegall, I'm reminded about how really special this bar association is. I practiced for 40 years with Heil Royster up in Allen, and this is really something unique and special, and it's all coming over me, listening to this and seeing all my good friends here. And I guess I'll start with, to the family and friends of Deborah Stegall, to the members of the judiciary, the Peoria County Bar Association, friends and guests. You're going to hear this a lot from all of us, I guess. It's my honor and privilege to present this memorial in recognition of and in honor of Deb Stegall, my colleague and friend. Many of you may not know her as well as some of the more prominent members of the bar, more public members of the bar, but Deb Stegall was a very special, talented person at our firm. Craig Young and I were talking this morning about how much we miss her, the person of Deb Stegall and her talents, but we need her in the areas of practice that she was so talented in. So it's important that we recognize every lawyer in this community and how good they are and what a good bar this is. Deb Stegall has a kind of an interesting background. She started as a secretary working for what was then Roadmaster in Albany, Illinois. She was assigned the most difficult boss in the building, who had fired half a dozen secretaries. And Deb was a young person, and she was given that position and handled it wonderfully to the point where that big nasty boss was just loved her to death. He included her on some collective bargaining matters while she was working there. And that kind of triggered her interest in the law. So she left that job, went to U of I, graduated from U of I, and then went to Southern Illinois University School of Law, and went back to Roadmaster and was an attorney for them doing employment law. So the amount of drive and determination that Deborah had in anything that she did, I refer to as Deb, but I'm trying to be formal, was amazing. And it was my unique pleasure, and Craig was in on this as well, to interview her when she decided to leave Olney, Illinois, and come to Central Illinois. Some family was in the area, and she was looking to go to private practice. And our firm was blessed to have her with our firm. So I'll give you some of the background. Deborah Lynn Allard Stegall, 64, passed away on February 29, 2020, at her residence. She was born September 21, 1955, in Olney, Illinois, daughter of Jack and Nancy Allard. On October 14, 2000, she married Dave Stegall, who preceded her in death on March 30, 2011. As I mentioned, law degree from Southern Illinois University School of Law, and then she was at Roadmaster and ended up at our firm. She was a partner in our firm. I know that's something that she really cherished. I'm trying to move out of my house in Illinois. I'm from Florida and honored to be here. I found a card that, you know, how you go through stuff that you're going to sell as you're hoping for a fire. No, I'm not keeping that brief from whatever, you throw stuff away. But I kept a card that Deb had sent me when she became partner. And all of us know how important it is to be lawyers, to be judges in the public and private sector. Sometimes I think we take it for granted, but it's an important part of our life. Again, I spent 40 years in the best bar association and the best firm. I have wonderful feelings. She sent me a card when she made partner, and I found it, and I didn't throw it away. I burned the rest of the stuff. But and she said, I wanted to send you this personal note, thanking you for all of your support. She says, you not only interviewed me, and being older, I don't remember interviewing her, but Craig and I discussed the fact that I think we both were there. She said, your continued support, providing advice and guidance throughout my career, made my partnership possible. I'm so grateful. And I kept this before I knew that I was going to be asked. And by the way, thanks to Craig and Dave for asking me to do this. There are others here that could comment on Deb, Bill Covey, and Lisa Kahn, who worked closely with her. She was a special person. And when I say we miss her being in the office and the advice on employment matters, transactional matters, and how important it is for us to mentor and guide. I mean, you talked about your mentorship and all that. It's important to people, and it was with Deborah. She chaired a number of areas of practice for us, the business organization transaction practice, agribusiness, Growmark, which Bill works at Growmark. When we hired Deb, the first thing I did was get in the car. I put her in my car, and we drove to Bloomington to introduce her to Growmark because she was impressive. And if any of you know Deborah, she was a rule follower. One time I tried to cross a street in Chicago, my wife and I were against the light, and she corrected us immediately. You can't walk right now. So follow the rules. Well, I'm driving her kind of quickly to Growmark, and she pointed out that I was speeding. So Deborah was, and she was that good on briefs as well. In sentences, she would say, no, you got to say that. So in addition to the agribusiness practice, the healthcare practice, an article was written about Deb in the Leading Lawyers in 2015, one of the top 50 downstate women lawyers. And she was very involved in her family activities, her nephews, her mother, her sister. Deb was a wonderful person to be around and to practice law with. I was telling Craig today, I said, thinking back on my practice, my years here, there are two categories I put lawyers in. Both lawyers I work with in my office and lawyers that are opposition lawyers. Those that make the practice of law pleasant and fun, and those who make it not pleasant and not fun. And I find those in my office, I find those in opposition. And Deb was clearly in the category of fun and sharp and made the practice of law enjoyable. For the most part here in Central Illinois, I had enjoyable people to appear in front of the judiciary, everyone. But there are a few people who made the other list, and I'll keep those to myself. Now, to kind of close, I don't want to go too long. I got a couple of funny stories, maybe just one. Employment law. Deb and I probably handled hundreds and hundreds of sex discrimination cases, harassment cases. And again, this area of practice, you do not need an imagination. People do things you can't imagine at work. But we had a client, he was a CEO of his company. And again, most of my harassment clients that were referred to me from someone who was Rex Linder's friends, basically. So Rex, if you talk to Rex, he's down in Dustin right now, but if you talk to Rex, he will agree with that. He would send me somebody who got in trouble, who was one of Rex's friends. Well, this guy was also one of Rex's friends, and he was a precursor to Governor Cuomo. He comes into my office, Deb and I are there. Now, the allegation is from this person, this female, young girl, that you kissed her. He looks at me, pauses, he goes, "Well, I kiss all the girls." I said, "That's not a defense, it's a class action." And you really can't, Deb and I are like, who is this guy? He's the CEO of the company. Anyway, we go to the hearing, and the opposition side had two women on the other side. During the hearing, in front of the administrative law judge, he's flirting across the table with these women in the hearing. Now, he also was a little touchy. You know, hug everybody, touch people, male or female. And so I'd already decided to play defense around him. And I said, "Jeff, you do the same, play defense, because this guy kissed all the girls and he's looking to, date the people across the table." So we get it worked out. Deb is still, she's shaking her head. We get it worked out. Resolve the case for him, okay? Doesn't mean he was innocent, but we resolved the case for him. We come back to the office. We're going to say our goodbyes. I'm still playing defense. Hi, good, congratulations, whatever. Deb steps up, does the same thing. He pulls her in and kisses her. The look on Deb's face was amazing. I did suggest a few more hours building on top of that. Anyway, so that's the kind of fun that Deb and I had with these cases. It was a blast. Now, there's one time that I got a stern look from Deb, and I hope Lisa's okay with this. I needed a place to get a haircut that wasn't on the north side of Peoria. I live on the Tazewell side. And I saw, Deb said, "Go to my hairdresser. She's over in East Peoria." I said, "Okay." So I go there, and that's great. And then the hairdresser schedules me at a certain time. Doesn't take long to do my hair. And I walk in, and Deborah is sitting there with foil coming places that guys aren't supposed to be aware of, And I just sat there and sat there. She was not happy that I was present. I promised I didn't take a picture. I asked her how many cable channels she got. She still wasn't happy. And then I joked about it for years later. She was never very pleasant when I brought it up. The hairdresser never scheduled with them again. Deb again was one of those lawyers, fun to practice law with. We truly miss her as a person and as an attorney in our law firm. So with that, kind of follow Dave's lead, I want to express my deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of my friend and colleague, Deb Stegall. We appreciate her life and dedication to the law as well as for friendship. And with that, I would make a similar motion to the ones that you heard. I almost wanted Dave Miller with his wonderful voice to just make it because I can't make it as good, but that this memorial be forever spread across this bar association and in the record. Thank you.
So moved.
Grant.
Thank you, Brad. As you can see, these memorials are sincere and from the heart because we enjoyed the people with whom we practiced and we appreciate giving them the best of our memories. Next, we have Tom Trager be presented by Mark Works.
I can echo Brad's comments about the uniqueness and wonderful ceremony this is. Yesterday, I was talking to an attorney from a different circuit up north, and the subject came up that what I was doing this afternoon. And he was very interested and quite taken back. He thought this was wonderful. And so thank you to all of you for coming. I'm making this presentation of Tom Trager, my partner for 20 years. Tom was a wonderful lawyer and a wonderful person to work with, and a very good mentor, wonderful mentor. Today, his wife Joyce is here, and his son, Dr. Bill Trager from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I know many of his family members are streaming. So with that, to the family and friends of Thomas Hum Trager, members of the judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests, of which there are many. Thank you to the Peoria Bar Association and David Miller, chairman of the Memorial Committee, for allowing me the honor and privilege of presenting this memorial resolution in honor of Thomas Hum Trager. To his family, he was known as Tom, Dad, and Grandpa. To his law firm, he was known as Tom, or most commonly, Trager. He was a talented individual. That talent was based on his ability to be down to earth on one hand and cerebral and thought-provoking the next. That dichotomy was reflected in his interests and ability to relate to people. With respects to his interests, he loved the complexity of the law as well as the simplicity of the outdoors. He loved ocean cruises with his wife Joyce and walking the simple grass fields of South Dakota, pheasant hunting with his brother William Trager, most affectionately known as Lum. With respect to his ability to relate to people, Tom was as comfortable talking to the common person as he was discussing a complex legal issue with another attorney. 1 minute, he could be having a warm, heartfelt conversation with a widow he represented regarding her husband's estate, and the next be involved in a meeting with one of the leaders of the several municipalities he represented in Peoria County. In meetings, he usually reserved his comments until towards the end. However, like E.F. Hutton, when Tom Trager spoke, everyone listened. He had an easygoing and concise manner in presenting his carefully considered thoughts, and he was a most compassionate human being. Tom had a broad educational background. He attended Columbia Grade School here in Peoria. After graduating from Peoria High in 1949, he headed east to the Ivy League institution of Dartmouth College, from which he graduated in 1953. He then joined the United States Army and served in the Army Counterintelligence Corps during the Korean War. After his service to our country, Tom graduated from the University of Illinois Law School in 1957. During the early years of his legal career, he practiced law with his father in the law firm of Trager and Trager. And he was a Peoria County Assistant State's Attorney. In 1966, he and John Slevin joined 3 other Peoria lawyers, Don Van Aken, Paul Cation, and Martin Lawless, in forming the law firm which evolved to be known as Van Aken, Lawless, Trager, and Slevin. Tom also served as the public administrator and guardian ad litem for Peoria County from 1982 until 2011. Tom was a member of the Peoria County and American Bar Associations and the Abraham Lincoln Inn of the American Inns of Court. He practiced before the Illinois State Courts and the United States District Court for the Central District of Illinois. Tom was also a member of the University of Illinois College of Law Alumni Association, Dartmouth Alumni Club of Chicago, the Illinois Valley Yacht and Canoe Club, and served as president of the Bradley Braves Chiefs Club. He received the Volunteer Community Award from the Salvation Army and was a member and supporter of the Hooked on Fishing program and Ducks Unlimited. Tom was particularly proud of his membership on the committee that raised funds Tom was particularly proud of the membership of be a member of the committee that raised funds and placed the Abraham Lincoln statue in the corner of Main and Jefferson in front of this courthouse. This is actually a rendering of that statue that was available to folks, and that is actually Tom's statue that he had in his office. That statue is entitled "Lincoln Draws the Line" and commemorates one of Lincoln's most famous speeches, which was delivered in 1854 as part of the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Lincoln delivered that speech on the lawn of the then Peoria County Courthouse near what is now the Bob Michael Bridge. The legal career of Thomas Hum Trager spanned 54 years. He was most deservedly named as a Peoria County Bar Association Pillar of the Bar in 2015. I am proud to have known Thomas Trager, call him a partner and a friend, and I do miss him. Therefore, Judge, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association expresses our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend Thomas Hum Trager, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Joyce Trager, the wife of Thomas Hum Trager, and to his 4 children, Dr. William L. Trager, Timothy J. Trager, Richard T. Trager, and Libby Ann Trager Wright, and 3 stepchildren, Ginger Blades Sholkowski, Jeffrey R. Blades, and Robert L. Blades. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of September, 2021.
So moved.
Granted.
Thank you, Mark. We next have a memorial to Kendall J. Chambers, be presented by Ron Hanna.
The family and friends of K.T. Chambers, members of the Judiciary and Peoria County Bar Association, family and guests, and I do want to point out Kathy Chambers, Mr. Chambers' wife is here, as well as Sarah Chambers' daughter. So welcome to everyone. I don't want to assume that everyone knows who I am, so I want to clarify at the beginning of this that I'm not the Ron Hanna, the gun-wielding maniac. And I was wise enough and had the wherewithal to get far into the field away from anybody, including Ms. Hoos and Jerry Brady and my father. So reduce my chances of getting shot down at least 50%. So, I'm honored to be here today to talk about Kate Chambers, and honestly, this is a huge responsibility for me because I think so much of Kate and the life that he lived and the legacy that he's left. For friends that have not met me or don't know me, friends that I'm to meet in the future here, I've been practicing in Peoria for about 20 years. That's how I know Tate. He was a career prosecutor. That was, in my experience and my interaction with him, that was his calling. I met him when I was an intern at the Federal Defender's Office, so I was on the opposing counsel side in the internship at the Federal Defender's Office back in 1999. I went to court with him, or with opposing counsel to him. And then following that internship, I practiced for about 15 years on the criminal defense end and got to know Tate as opposing counsel. The way that he ran his operations, the way that he treated people, the way that he treated defendants, all of those things were demonstrative just how wonderful of a character that Tate was. That he called me about I guess it would be almost 7 years ago, and indicated there was an opening at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So his invite actually, I went over and applied, and I started a job over there. So I've been at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I had the pleasure of working with Tate for about 5 years, 6 years. A lot of that time he was on detail, and I'll go over that in a minute here, to other locations, just doing amazing things for the Department of Justice. And I see Judge McDade is here, and Judge Hawley and Judge McCuskey. Tate had up the street in front of federal court the pleasure of trying cases and money matters in front of these judges. And it's a huge responsibility to be speaking on his behalf, because I know the judiciary just thought great things of him as well. And Judge Gorman, your father, and the work that he did in the Patty Court program, he just had a great relationship with basically everybody that came across his path and everybody that he worked with. So he truly was an extraordinary person. If you look at his resume, that alone was remarkable. But what really mattered to Tate, which you could determine pretty immediately, was that he just loved people. And he loved his community. And he just he had a huge heart. And that was something that he shared with Jerry Brady as well, the team of them working together on a number of initiatives in Peoria. Was just something fabulous to watch. He didn't know a stranger. He also had what might be referred to some as the gift of gab. Looking at Ms. Knaus, who worked with Tate over so many years, could tell you in any conversation that Tate basically could talk himself into anything and kind of out of anything, and probably into some things he had no business doing. But he was just so convincing. Like people wanted to be around Tate. I wanted to know more about him. When I first met him, I had the pleasure of working him in all those different capacities. The truth be told, most of the stories about Tate could probably be told best over a less formal setting than this, just because you get a moment to sit back and have that memory and kind of stare off in the distance and grin at the thought of those experiences that you had with Tate. I think everybody did that. Whenever we sit around and reminisce, in fact, we did this yesterday at our office, sitting around the table with Ms. Legge and Ms. Knaus, just kind of telling old Tate stories. And you just kind of sit back and you grin. And I hope that when I pass on to the next life, that when people sit around and talk about me, that they have that same feeling of, I got a funny story and that guy was just great. He's a role model. He just had a huge heart. So wonderful memories of Tate. Turning to the formal business, his history that I was talking about, that resume is just incredible. He actually was born in Lewiston, which is incredible. Either Lewiston or Lewistown, I haven't figured that out. I've been there 1,000 times. I don't know whether it's Lewiston or Lewistown. But he was born in Lewiston, Illinois in 1952. Spent his early days hunting, exploring the woods, enjoying time with family. He joined the Department of Justice in 1987, and he served as the Assistant United States Attorney for the Central District of Illinois. That's a position that he never left, despite a significant number of achievements and accolades. Tate remained really humble, and he truly left an impression. He was a country boy at heart and never left that. He presented that to juries who tried cases in front of him. He had that country boy heart in everybody they talked to and everybody he dealt with. He served in the Army. He was in the military, served as a Hawk missile radar mechanic. He served in the Illinois Army National Guard, primarily as a JAG officer. In school, he graduated from Bradley University in 1979. He remained a lifelong loyal Brave. I would only go to games here and there, and I always saw Tate across the way wearing his red Bradley gear. So he was a diehard Bradley fan. Graduated from Southern Illinois University School of Law in 1982. He was the managing editor of the Law Review, captain of the moot court at SIU. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I heard as I walked in here that he was #1 in his class. Is that It was a rumor, at least. We can believe that. Tate would go. He would. Yes, I was. Okay. Tate met Kathy Hines, and they married in 1983. After law school, Tate was a clerk for Honorable Richard H. Mills, whom he credited for forming his legal and professional character. And then he has just this incredible career at the Department of Justice. Which I see in him as a highlight of his ability to demonstrate his servant's heart and his love for people. He ran a number of successful law enforcement operations and task force around the Central District of Illinois, developed strong bonds and enduring friendships with his teammates. And those teammates are federal agents, AUSAs that work with him, local state's attorneys that work with him, agents that are brought in from local law enforcement offices to work with him, all wanted to be part of what was going on with Tate because he just had some momentum about him, and he could. I'll hold back on that comment. No, I won't. People would tell you that Tate had the ability to indict a ham sandwich, basically, because he was very, very convincing. But I'm sure there was probable cause to believe that the ham sandwich. His personality also served him well in the courtroom, which, as I was saying before, he just presented this, I'm Country Tate, where I'm from, they call it supper, not dinner. He had this real folksy attitude when he called ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it was folks. So that the people would know that he was loose, and he was truly himself as he presented himself to the jury. Tate liked to eat. Not just for the food, though. I was fortunate enough to have a number of opportunities to sit down with him and talk about, just life. And he would take that opportunity to get to know people. He would call it breaking bread. If you want to get work done, and you want to have a good relationship with someone, you need to sit down and enjoy a meal with them. So that was something that he really enjoyed. He was proud of the achievements that they had with initiatives in Peoria, the Patty Court program, this pretrial alternatives to detention initiatives they did with Judge Gorman. John Gorman, that is, which was a program basically to help people avoid going to prison by going through an intense, usually a year-long treatment program and getting back on their life back on track instead of going to the Bureau of Prisons. So he helped develop that with John Gorman and others, and was very proud to be the coordinator of that program. He also helped develop the Don't Shoot program in Peoria, along with Jerry Brady, a beloved friend of his. It was really, really cool to watch those two work together. They would get together with the mayor, with the sheriff. Again, it's all task force. Get all these people in the room, get all the people together who have the resources, who have the ability to have an impact on this community, and let's get them talking and let's figure out what we can do to make this a better place. So that's a good role. That's a good model to follow. It was something that he did with the Don't Shoot program. And I would see him spending a lot of time with Brady, always talking on the phone with him, meeting with him for lunch. And the Mayor's Coalition Against Heroin was something that the two of them started up together. He was proud of that as well. The years that I really started working over there at the U.S. Attorney's Office, so within the past 6 or so years, Tate was really doing a lot of detail work for the Department of Justice. So he was sent out basically to Washington, D.C., and then to Columbia, South Carolina. In D.C., he served as the national coordinator for Project Safe Neighborhoods and a legal program manager for EOUSA's evaluation and review staff. In South Carolina, he worked for the National Advocacy Center as an assistant director of publications unit, the editor-in-chief of the Federal Journal of Law and Practice, for which he wrote numerous articles. This may sound like nothing to anyone else who's out there, but from the standpoint of someone who's sitting in an office looking at what happens in the Department of Justice, these are big deals. The things that he did were just monumental. His final detail was a criminal program manager for DOJ's evaluation and review staff. That's what years, like I said before. And during the tenure, the department participated in 59 evaluations where they go around to these various districts, United States Attorney's offices across the United States, and basically evaluate them, tell them what they're doing right, tell them what they're doing wrong. And in the course of all those, he met people from all over the United States. And again, broke bread with them, shared stories with them, and became friends with basically everybody that ran across his path. So he did basically everything he did was exceptionally done well. numerous accolades, and he received 2 Director's Awards from the Executive Office of the United States Attorney. That's really wild. He was equally proud of the awards that were bestowed upon him by the law enforcement officers that work with him on these various task forces. What I gathered from him in the time that I spent with him was even more important than those things was his faith. He was a man of strong faith. He led the Episcopal Church camp of Illinois, sharing his faith with each camper, served on the vestries in Illinois and DC. In DC, he led a Bible study for the homeless. In Illinois and South Carolina, he participated in education for ministry. And even more important than that was family. So Tate's devotion to his family is one of the great legacies that he left behind. He's survived by Kathy, his wife, his children, Jeff Chambers, Katie Chambers, Jessica Bunzel, and Sarah Tate Chambers. So as his family shared in his memoriam, Tate never knew a stranger, and his generosity was unmatched. His family and friends remain eternally grateful for every shared moment they had with him. One final note, as I have had occasion as I'm sitting in my office over there, just a few offices down from where Tate was stationed, to reach out to folks in DOJ in South Carolina and Washington, D.C. People I've never talked to, I have no idea who they are, but I'll call them up for whatever I need to do for work. And I'll say, hi, this is Ron Hanna. I'm at AUSA in Peoria, Illinois. Oh, Peoria? Tate Chambers. I love Tate Chambers. Tell him this. It was, the man was beloved by everyone who ran across his path, and his legacy will live on. And he planted a seed, basically, in everybody that ran across his path, and a little bit of his spirit passes on with each of us, so it stays alive. Certainly in everything that I do in my job, in my capacity, I look up to all the things that he did. I'm just in his shadow, and I want to be a big boy like Tate Chambers someday. So he fought the good fight, finished the race, kept the faith. He never got tired of saying, Your Honor, Tate Chambers for the government. So Chief Judge Boardman, I move that this memorial become a permanent part of the records of the 10th Judicial District and the Peoria County Bar Association. So moved.
Right.
Thank you, Ron, and I would only add, may each of us in our professional lives be as warmly appreciated as those whom we honor today. The next memorial is for Glenn Beckendorf, led by Jim Beckendorf.
You're right. It is nice to get this on. So, that is the wonderful part about coming up here, along with sharing all the wonderful things that have been said about all the other councilmen. So, actually, to the family, friends, guests, staff, as far as from my father, members of the judiciary, Peoria County Bar, first of all, thank Dave Miller, as well as for contacting me about this memorial service and asking that I go ahead and actually give this presentation on behalf of a man who I truly believe that I'm standing on his shoulders. It's something that everything that I have now as far as with the firm and everything else started by him, and it was as a result of him and his graces that he gave that to me. It's something that, needless to say, I deeply respected my father, Glenn Beckwith, and it's something that through his life, he tried to hold himself out with character and in the utmost of grace for everyone. He was born in Street on August 25th, 1929, and literally I am an attorney because of him and everything that he did following his life. But he grew up during the Great Depression and in World War II. Then at the end of World War II, basically, he was working through, basically as a kid, he was working in brick kilns, he was working in the family diner, working on the railroad as far as a truck laborer, and doing all sorts of manual labor. Well, when you're growing up in the early 30s and through that time frame in the late 30s, it's something where he figured out very quickly that he did not want to work as a living with his hands. He wanted to work with his head. And fortunately, he was able to go ahead and meet an individual who was an attorney and saw what he had done and what he was able to present and realized that giving back is what he wanted to do. And so with that, he knew that he needed the education. In order to get that, when you're in Streeter, there's not a whole lot of way to get out of Streeter necessarily, for any of you who know what Streeter is like. But he decided that he needed to go ahead and enlist in the Navy. So he did that at the end of the World War II, and he served on the USS Iowa and served on the Columbus. And he had a lot of wonderful trips around that, going to China, Japan, all over the Pacific, and going all along that area. Something that through many areas and instances, he did go ahead and state that, when he was stationed, for many of you who knew him, a situation where his eyesight was not fantastic, so he memorized the chart to go ahead and get into the Navy. Things like that. He did what he needed to go ahead and move through those things. But then he realized that after he was able to go ahead and get out of the Navy after World War II, he used the GI Bill to go ahead and attend and graduate from Eureka for college. And then he obtained his law degree down at Washington University in St. Louis. Well, then after graduation, in order to be closer to the family, because my mother's family was still in Fairview, his family was still in Streeter, they decided to move back to Morton. So they moved there, and then he began practicing with Nate Ellis, another name from the past. And so thereafter, after he worked with Nate for a number of years, then decided to start a practice with Rudy Westfall and Beckendorf here in Peoria in the Central Building. Lou Benassi joined the firm after a while, and then after Patricia went ahead and obtained her law license, then Patricia started their own firm. Soon thereafter, in 1981, when my brother David graduated law school and joined the practice, then my father David established the law firm Beckendorf at that time. So then thereafter, 6 years, I joined the firm, and during that time frame, our sister Kathy even worked in the law firm for a while. Many people say she was a smart one. She got out and went on to a career in marketing and sales, so it has a great following there. So she's the one who decided to get out of the practice on that side. But it's something that he was very proud of, the fact that he was able to work with his family. And basically it's something that his love of the law was truly infectious, and that's why it was something that both David and I followed in the practice, and then carrying that on through. And what we oftentimes say, and since there is generational, other attorneys here, we always said that we knew that it was a gene defect for two sons to follow their father in the law. Well, then we figured out, okay, now in our family, it's a dominant gene defect because his granddaughter and the grandson, my son Noah, are also attorneys. And so it's an issue where you have a dominant gene defect with the law. It shows how infectious that actually is. Now, something that he also had a passion for our family. And so my father made sure that as an entire family, we would get together every Sunday for dinner. And so we would go through church and things of that nature and then have the family time with that. He loved dealing with that and loved going through different aspects. But then even after he'd retired, when he would come back into town, he and I would, if I was in the Morton office, he and I would walk down the street to a restaurant or something like that. And we would go ahead and reminisce. And it was always something where he always made sure he would ask about not only family and friends, but staff who were so close. They were friends. They were staff. Well, it's something that, and kind of going into the other history part of that. Decades ago, my father helped go ahead and start a legal aid office in Beacon. He handled a lot of pro bono cases for Prairie State, Southside Mission, worked as counsel for Southside Mission on various things and other organizations. He also was an entrepreneur. He had a variety of other businesses, including Hometown Title. And with that company, as well as the law firm, and as people sitting in the back row can tell you, they didn't refer to him as Glenn. They didn't refer to him as Mr. Beckwith. It was Papa. And it was something where they would very affectionately refer to him as Papa. And it's something that they were so much more than just staff to him. And he was so much more than an employer. Now, he served for a lot of years as both counsel and as a director for Morton Community Bank. He was a Mason, task commander of the American Legion, 318 post in Morton, president of the Morton JCs, sergeant at arms, national JCs, board member of Central Boy Scouts, just like all of the prior attorneys, along with litany of wonderful service. And that seems to be one of the great things about the attorneys in this judicial district, is they want to give back, and they do serve. And that's what we're able to do in this area. Plus, he was a longtime member of the Morton United Methodist Church and was able to go ahead and provide through a lot of things on that side. The other thing about my father, through many of you may know that he was an avid golfer. He thought on a variety of occasions that, all right, it's time to retire, so he'd go out and play more golf. Well, then he figured out that he failed retirement 3 times because of the fact that he liked golf, but not quite that much. And so he'd always come back because his real love was the practice of law and dealing with that. And so he kept coming back to the practice of law from that side. One fun thing, though, is he was also humble about his golf game as well as he was in other areas, because of the fact that he wouldn't express his score or anything of that nature. He had one particular foursome that he was golf with, where their wager was they'd have a wager who was going to buy the 19th hole. After they come back, I'd ask him, okay, how'd you do? He wouldn't say he scored. He said, no, I still have my money in my pocket. So, you know that. But then the other part of what he would love to do is he would go through and he loved to fish, and we'd go on fishing trips all over, things of that nature. And it was always interesting. He'd sit quietly there, and then suddenly the rest of us in the boat suddenly realized, okay, basically the one that's caught all the fish is my father. And so he loved to go ahead and just take care of things in his own manner, very quietly, and work through it. But it was always accomplishing the goal at the end. He was also a private pilot, enjoyed doing that, and he also enjoyed doing scuba diving. And I was fortunate from the time that I was 9 to go ahead and be able to fly with him, and then in later life to go ahead and be able to dive with him. He went ahead and he loved traveling, traveled through Europe, Japan, China, and then loved to go down for his passion, which was New Orleans style jazz. And so he would make a trip, not every year, but most years, down to New Orleans, oftentimes with my brother David. And so they both leave the office and they head down there for a number of days and just go through listening to jazz down in New Orleans. So they truly love that. Another thing with my father, loved wine. And so something that he'd have me climb into the cellar when I was young to get that out. But through our work with that together, developed my passion for wine. The reason for saying that is because on his deathbed, it was something that you were asking if he wanted water, wanted anything to drink. And he could barely speak, but it was still a situation. Okay, Dad, you want anything? No. Want some wine? No. It's really nice Brunello, Dad. Okay. Then, not even opening his eyes, handed him the glass. Took that in typical fashion. Sniffed it, took the sip. Could barely speak it, even with that. Took the taste. Oh, yeah. So, even down to the end, he knew what to enjoy. So, but then he was able to go ahead and, fortunately, he was able to split his time between his house in Morton and his house in Punta Gorda, Florida. And so he was able to bounce back and forth with that. But then in 2012, went ahead and realized that suddenly he took a trip out to Vashon Island, Washington. Didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time until we realized that he was going out to visit Joanne Basilia. Well, he and Joanne had known each other since she was 18, when he was president of the JC's, and she had won the Tazewell County Beauty Pageant, so he was driving a convertible with her in the back waving. And so they got to know each other at that point in time. Well, come full circle, many decades later, went ahead and they started dating, so to speak, in 2012, and then they decided to go ahead and schedule a wedding date for January 3rd, 2013. My comment was, that's a little fast. Is there a reason? Being inquisitive on that side, he said, well, I'm 83, no time like the present. But in truth, it really had nothing to do with his age. It was because of the fact that he was head over heels in love with her. And so, and the kicker to that is, you know, for all the time with my mom and everything like that, it was a very wonderful relationship. But Joanne, in his later years, could get him to do anything, even go parasailing at the age of 89. So I give him credit for he did all sorts of things, even until he was almost 91. They were wonderfully happy together, but then sadly, basically had the diagnosis for cancer, and 16 days later, he was no longer with us. But at that point in time when he passed, it was an issue where we were at Joanne's house up in Vashon Island with Puget Sound and Mount Rainier in the background. And so that was just, for our family, that was a wonderful time to go ahead and have my father's soul go ahead and meet with our Lord and Savior. Now, and then after that, there's a situation where we were coming back, and my wife Jane was coming back, and it is an island, so you have to take a shuttle to get off the island. And she was in the shuttle, and the lady who was driving asked her, okay, who are you? Pleasant conversation, what have you. She stated her name and made a comment about the fact that my father had passed. And at that time, she went ahead, and the driver was extremely sad. And it was something that she made the comment, everyone on the island knows Gwen and Joanna. They're the cutest young married old people on anywhere. And we would all love to have that relationship and that kind of relationship. That's just what family meant to my father and to all of us. And so he was truly blessed in so many ways, including the job that he dearly loved, the people that he worked with, and had family and friends to be able to be with. So with that, I state that be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Blaine Beckwith, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, his family, and friends. Be it further resolved, the Secretary of the Peoria Bar Association will copy this memorial resolution to our family. So for that, I ask the motion.
So moved.
Granted.
Thank you, Jim. Our next memorial will be for Medley Med Turno. It'll be presented by Phil Jacobs.
The first shall be last. May it please the court, members of the judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and the family and friends of Medley A. Turno. I'm grateful to the Peoria County Bar Association for the privilege and honor of presenting this memorial resolution in honor and recognition of Medley A. Turno. Medley Arden Turno, commonly known as Med, was born to Lester and Artis Turno on February 18, 1940, in Princeton, Illinois. The youngest of two children, Med was a farm boy whose ancestors were farmers. He was a man of integrity and faith who loved the land and nature. He loved life, God, family, and country, music, art, and history, humor, sports, poetry, singing, writing, running, cooking, and trout fishing. Med attended Manlis High School, now Bureau Valley High School, and he was a star athlete. I don't think you can get there from here. He graduated from Southern Illinois University in 1962, and thereafter the University of Illinois Law School in 1965. While in law school, he married Kathy Lehrman, and they were the proud parents of two sons, Nicholas, married to Dawn, who has three children, Naomi, Eden, and Nicholas, and Matthew, married to Sarah, who has two children, Soren and Ida. After law school, Med started practice with Safford, West, and Herring. Thereafter, it became Safford, West, Turno, Radley, and Mathers. And it ended as Safford, West, Turno, and Jager until Med semi-retired in 2010 and practiced out of his home until shortly before his death on August 21st, 2020. Med's practice was primarily real estate, probate, and farm and estate planning. And he himself was a farmer until the day he died. He had some extremely wealthy clients and some extremely poor clients. And those are usually the ones he called on me to help him with, the latter ones. He was an active member of the Illinois State Bar Association and the Peoria County Bar Association, serving on various committees, including for a time, the Peoria County Bar Association Skit Committee. Although before my time, I'm told he penned one masterful limerick about two defendants who appeared before Judge Reardon that began, two boys caught in a thicket by police were given a ticket. I think I know the end of that, but I'm not going to repeat that. Med was a devout Christian and a member of Glen Oak Christian Church. He was a member of the Masonic Lodge and was a 33rd degree Mason. He will be missed by the many people whose lives he touched. Personally, I remember his strong work ethic and great sense of humor. He was a fine lawyer, a loyal partner, and a great friend. I miss him an awful lot. I just want to say here, I echo the sentiments of those here who have said today that they think this is a great ceremony and it's a wonderful tradition. It's only in the past 5 to 10 years that I've been coming to these. It's just a more immediacy the older I get. But I think this is really wonderful what we do here. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Medley A. Turno, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Kathy Turno and his wife, and to his son Nicholas and his son Matthew, submitted the 2nd day of September, 2021.
So moved.
Granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. I'm sure that Med did appreciate it. Now, this brings us to, with the permission of the court, what has historically been the most entertaining portion of the memorial. We open the floor to those who remember those whom we honor and who want to share those memories and remembrances. And usually once we get started, a number of very good and interesting and entertaining stories arise. So for those who would like to share some remarks or thoughts of the attorneys whom we honor here today, the floor is open. All right, Judge Eagleton.
May it please the court, one of the few good things about being old is that you have friendships that last for a long time. Tom Trager and I go back over 75 years. He was the class behind me at Central, first string football player. I was third string. And I don't want to even try to start to tell the fun stories that we had. So I'll quash one rumor. The fact that we both married ladies named Joyce is a coincidence.
Any additional thoughts? Yes.
Hi, I'm Calista Reed. I worked at Kyle Royster Belper and Ellen for 37 years. And everyone used to say she knows where all the stuff is hidden. But Deb Stegall was not something that was hidden in our office. I remember Brad and Craig remember interviewing her. Well, I was there when she was interviewed. And I got a chance to meet her over the phone, and then I met her when she came into the office. And I still remember running up to the lawyers who had interviewed her and said, "You have got to hire her. She is terrific." And she was friends not only with our attorneys, but with our staff. She was just loved. And I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Heartfelt and sincere. Some additional anecdotes memories regarding any of the attorneys that are here today? Judge McCuskey?
Never shy and bashful.
No, you haven't been known for that.
What I was going to comment on, Calista stood up. I'd known Calista for a long time. I saw her outside. We talked, and I said, Calista, I know all these people except Deborah. And she went on and talked about her and gave me the background, the same background from Brad. And what I was thinking, I'm so glad that Calista stood up, because when you hear from the secretaries and the court reporters about people, then you really get to have the full picture. And so everything that Brad said, Calista had already said outside. And so if we can encourage in the future some of the secretaries to show up as Calista did, we get also a full picture. But the one I want to talk about is med turnout. Those of us who are Masons can't talk about everything we do. And Dick Eagleton and I have been involved with med. But I want to tell you, what a wonderful actor. What a wonderful person to ask to do any part. And so listening to you, Phil, and I want to tell you, Med was just the person who could light up an audience at some of these Masonic events. Tom Trager and Joyson has probably seen this. Every time I saw Tom, it was a smile on his face to talk about basketball. He being, at one time, the head of the Chiefs Club, me being involved in all kinds of things at Illinois State. And we would talk about college basketball and the upcoming Missouri Valley tournament, or the tournament that ended. And I could go on with other people, but I enjoy all these people, one way or the other, for, as was said by Ron, breaking bread. And I hope we never lose the camaraderie of the Peoria County Bar Association Christmas party and other events where we can be in the future without masks, be within a foot or two, talking quietly, not only about our profession, but also all the things we love about each other outside of being a lawyer.
What a blessing it is to be among friends and persons in the same profession whom you respect and with whom you can enjoy a beer or break bread and share common experiences. One of the attributes of this memorial is the fact, and I have said it a number of times, you're looking at the individual from both sides. You're looking because you have the family here, and they don't know what he or she did during the day. They would simply leave home, come back in the evening. Did you have a good day? Yeah. Or no. And they get to hear from those of us in the profession how much we regarded the professional talents and the personality of the departed attorney, and what it meant to us and what it meant to that person to be a part of this noble profession. And on the other side, those of us who are in the profession don't really know about the personal life of the individual whom we honor. And so we get both sides of the equation. The family hear about the professional life, and the professionals hear about the person as an individual, and we all share and rejoice in that individual's life. Jay Jansen and I did the memorial for Henry Netzel. Jay prepared it and apologized that he hadn't really had the opportunity to be here and present it. And Jay has presented many memorials in the past. So being essentially of Jay's vintage, although he's a few years older than I looked at what he had written about workers' compensation practice back in the late 60s and the 70s. And what he said was true, and it reminded me, he brought up the name Bill Beckwith. I doubt that anybody here remembers Bill Beckwith. Dick Eagleton does. Bill Beckwith was a petitioner's workers' comp lawyer in the 50s and the 60s. He died probably about 1970 or so. And in the days when the Workers' Compensation Act had very, very, very low awards, there wasn't much money to be made unless you controlled in excess of 100 cases every time you came in. And you were on a circuit, and you would travel to Decatur and to Kewanee and to Galesburg, and there would be different arbitrators there. So I was filling in one day for Don Baylor, who was a dean of workers' compensation practice. And this was right after I got out of law school, so it would have been 66, 67 along in there. So I was at the Industrial Commission call in Decatur and happened to run into Bill Beckwith. And he got me off to the side, put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, "Young man, put it all in tax exempts." And that was his sage advice, and that was the practice that Henry Netzel joined with Don Baylor. And I went through the litany of the workers' compensation arbitrators at that time and thereafter. So, as some of you who have a few years on you and know all too well, one of the things you do as you get older is remember, and then you like to reminisce. So an event like this brings back a flood of memories regarding each of the attorneys whom we honor. The only one I didn't know was Deb Stegall. I didn't know Tate Chambers that well, but I had met him and chatted with him. So the floor is open. Let's have somebody. Is that you, John? Yes. Behind the mask, I recognize you.
It is nice to meet this awesome. I had the privilege of practicing law with Tom Trager for almost 50 years. And I learned a great deal from Tom, not just about lawyering, but how to treat people. And there was never a nicer man or woman practicing law in Peoria than Tom Trager. But every once in a while, he could be a little quirky. Thinking out, I'm smiling over there. And I remember one incident about 30 years ago. We've got a law firm got a new coffin maker, real fancy thing with double burners and all this. But of course, it came without instructions. Trager decided he would make a pot full of decaffeinated coffee. Gets the green envelope, pours the contents into the empty glass thing. Now he's supposed to put that under the coffee maker and let the hot water do its job. What does Tom do? He takes this pitcher of freshly brewed regular coffee and pours it into the sink. That was how we were treated too, making coffee.
Well, I remember Tom very well, going back more years probably than anybody but Judge Eagleton, because Tom and I, although from different schools, were in the same fraternity, national fraternity, and he was very active as a beta and conducted rush parties for those of us who were youngsters would go away to school. And Tom and I always have shared that and always enjoyed each other's company immensely. He was a man of many talents and many interests who could talk your arm off on almost any subject.
Hi.
Yes.
My name is Vera Cornish, and for 30 years I served as the reception in the state's attorney's office. But I'm here to talk about Jerry Brady. Before Jerry became the state's attorney, he was a friend of mine. Our kids went to school together before, and then after that, he was my private attorney. And I'm like some of the other people that's here that says, I sure hated it when he became state's attorney, because that no longer could he be my private attorney. But anyway, on the other hand, I loved it when he became state's attorney because I knew justice would be served. That's the type of person that Mr. Brady was. I worked in the state's attorney's office under 3 state's attorneys. And it was a funny thing that I used to do. Although I had a certain time to be at work to clock in and to clock out. I always came early enough to turn the lights on, make the coffee, and do all kinds of stuff around there that probably nobody else wanted to do. But I always was probably the first person to get to work. That was until Jerry Brady became state's attorney. When Jerry became state's attorney, I said to myself, well, what time did this man get here? Now I supposed to start at 8:30, and I'm here at sometime 7:15 to 7:30. What time do he get here? And one day I came at 6, and I sat in my car to see what time Jerry actually made it to work. And I'll be darned, that man was there at about 6:30. And so I came in and I talked to him. I said, Jerry, I said, I sat out in my car to watch to see what time you came in to work. And he said, you really did that? I said, yeah. I said, because I've always been the first person to make it in the state's attorney's office. And he laughed about it. So the next day, I said, I'm gonna beat him. I came to work at 6, I think it was like 6:20. I got there at 6:20. When I went to turn on the lights, he flipped the light on. Thought she got me, didn't you? But anyway, that was the type of person he was. Mr. Brady was one of the best people you ever wanted to meet in life. Whether he was a boss, a friend, a neighbor, he was one of the best people I've ever met in my life. And I used to tell him that all the time. And in the morning times when I would go through there, I said, you know what, Jerry? I said, I pray for you an awful lot. I said, because you got a job that is really, kind of stressful here. And he said, stressful? No, it's no stress to me. And that was the type of person he was. He was he would not stress over stuff. He just wanted to get the job done. Mr. Brady was one of the most wonderful human beings I ever met in my life. And like I said, I worked there as a receptionist for 30 years. And I got to see some of you attorneys that went from interns up to sit on the bench as a judge. So I was there many a year. But I tell you, there was no greater man that entered this courthouse than Mr. Brady. Mr. Brady loved the people, and he wanted justice for the people. And he would do whatever it was, whether it was something that was to do here in this courthouse, or whether it was something on the outside as far as going down to Southside Mission and dipping potatoes or corn on Thanksgiving for those that was less fortunate than him. That man was a gift to this world, not only to Peoria County, he was a gift to this world, period. And then I laugh, because I know a lot of people, when they enter places like this, and I would come on up here, and come on and sit on this bench with Jerry's family, because Jerry always felt and made me feel as though I was his family. He never treated me and even his family knew I was family. So that's the reason I'm here today. I would have never could have lived with myself without coming here and honoring Mr. Brady. Mr. Brady was he was one of the best men I've ever met in my life. He was one of the most fairest men I ever met in my life. And he loved his family. He loved you, Chris, Sue, Ryan. He loved you. And he would tell me, and I'm gonna sit down now. But the one thing that I want everybody to know, because I used to ask him all the time, Jerry, I mean, you such a wonderful person. Is there anybody, if I would say, who is the person that you honor and you like the most? I say, is you got a star, or, I mean, is there a movie star? Because I just wanted to know, because a lot of times we will pattern ourselves after those people that we admire. And I'm playing games with him this day. I said, Jerry, I said, if there's one person in this world that you could tell me that you would like to be like, or is your superstar, I said, who would it be? And you know what he said to me? He said, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. He said, it would be my big brother John. He said, my brother John is my hero. And I said, Jerry, I said, that is really, really sweet. But he said, I want you to remember this. He's my hero. So Mr. Brady, you were your little brother's hero. And I wanted you to know that was some behind the door talk me and Jerry did. But I always wanted you to know that you was his hero. But Jerry was a lot of people's heroes. And I just thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
I'm sure Jerry's ears are burning.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Judge Warman? I'm the uneducated one that became the fireman. Judge McDade, the members of the 10th Judicial Circuit, everybody that presented. I remember coming to the courthouse, and Dad took me to your courtroom, Mr. McDade, and I got to stand up there and bang the gavel. But I still chose to be a fireman. But what I'll tell everybody in this room, I'll keep this short because we've been here a lot longer, but to the families, Chambers family, for those that I had the privilege of hearing about your father, or your husband, or your family member, to the attorneys, this is like the brotherhood that exists in the firehouse. That you guys do this to honor people that serve before you. Mentors, whether it's the Hannahs, Mr. Donahue, the legal community of Peoria, you guys are a class act. Thank you for honoring that.
That has never been said better, and how often we forget about our profession and the pride and the good fortune we have to share it with those who are in this room and those whom we have honored. Are there any other reminiscences, any additional thoughts? I'm sure that the families of those whom we honor are gratified by the appreciation we show to our departed comrades in the practice of law and the administration of justice. In accordance with the traditions of this event, I conclude with the balance of John Donne's poem, "No Man is an Island." Each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind. Therefore, Send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Thank you, everyone. I'm sure that those who we honor appreciate.
And with that, let's take these positive memories, families, to hear how all of us felt about your loved ones. Let's carry these positive memories and hearts filled with gratitude and go forth with the rest of our day. And I believe there is a
I was going to say, before anyone could get up, lest I forget it, there is a reception for friends and family in the Renaissance room on the 3rd floor of the Jansen building. We hope that everyone can attend.
And court is adjourned. Thank you, one and all.